Oh,
Do you have to sign in somewhere?
well, thank you all for coming. We will get right into this tonight. This is not a meeting tonight. It's not a board meeting or anything like that. No decisions will be made. But we want to basically have an opportunity to get some feedback from homeowners about some things we want to fill you in on. So with that, I'll ask Danielle to get us started tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and hopefully voice your opinions, listen to what your board's been working on. Again, to reiterate what Tony has said, this is we're having a focus meeting for one topic, and the topic that we're talking about is a long-term arrangement with the Somerset Golf and Country Club. I know that in the past there's been a lot of mixed feelings about the agreement that the Homeowners Association has with the Country Club. So what we wanted to do is get homeowner feedback. The status of the current short-term amenity will be, an update will be given at the next board meeting, so that's not something we're going to be talking about this evening. To give you guys a little bit of a background, per our current lease agreement, the country club is going to be putting in another amenity. And they approached us saying, hey, we want to talk to you guys about the short-term amenity. You know, this was the idea that was proposed in the current agreement. Is this what the homeowners really want? We want to make sure that we're putting in something that's useful, that's beneficial. So this is how discussions began with the country club back in January, I think. January or February. It's been a long haul. So when we started talking to them about putting in a short-term amenity, what we're quickly realizing is that our community is growing, we're running out of space, and that in order to keep Somerset as one of the premier master plan communities in northern Nevada, we have to think long-term. We have to think growth, and we have to think, what is the future of our association going to hold? What's going to be bringing people in? How are we going to create more amenities that are going to continue to draw people into our community? Again, we've been in discussions with the country club. No agreements have been met at this time. But what we are looking at is hopefully replacing the current country club lease agreement with a new lease agreement that has a much better win for the homeowners association. And we'll get into all the ins and outs of that. Again, when we were approached, it was, if we're going to redo the current lease agreement, what is the association going to walk away with? What's the win for us? So that's how the basis of these negotiations began. Let's see, do you guys have anything to add, or?
There are no agreements at this point, but we're starting to see what some of the key terms of the agreement might be. So that's why we want to share this with homeowners and give the opportunity to give us some feedback on whether we're going in the right direction. And we'll explain. The one thing I would say, we're going to get into the details, but please let us get through the whole thing because it actually fits together. And any one piece by itself is going to be misleading until you understand why the pieces fit together the way they do. So what we'll do is we'll do a presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments for anybody who wants to say anything about it. Okay?
So this time I'm going to turn it over to Ray, and he's going to give us some background on the current agreement that we're in the country club.
Thank you, Danielle. My welcome to everyone here as well. The current lease and amenities agreement with Country Club, the first year of that agreement actually was last year, January 1st of last year it started. The initial phase of that agreement is a 3-year agreement taking us through next year. The Homeowner Association, and the payment for that is $15 per unit. The homeowner association then has an option to continue that same current lease and amenities agreement into years 4 through 6 at $12 per unit. Then there's another option on that particular lease from years 7 through 10, the last 4 years of a 10-year total agreement, also at the $12 per unit price. During this period of time, should the country club decide to build a clubhouse, and during that entire period of time, should the country club decide to proceed with building a clubhouse, it would come back to the homeowner association to ask the homeowner association whether or not we wanted to participate in including structures or amenities within that clubhouse for the use of all residents within Somerset. So that's how the current arrangement is structured at this particular point in time. So let me step back a little bit too. Danielle alluded to, let's say, the growth of the community within Somerset here. At the end of last year, we had 2,372 assessment-paying units. There's actually only about 1,900 homes that are built in Somerset today. Melissa and I went through an exercise a couple of weeks ago where we went through a forecast of the total number of units and a year-by-year approach in terms of when we could possibly foresee the units coming into placement within the Vascular Association. We went through our own initial forecast with that. We then shared it with Somerset Development and asked them for their feedback on the unit count. They came back to us and said that our forecasts are actually much more aggressive, much more accelerated than what you're showing in your particular forecast in terms of the unit count. But they said, well, probably from a conservative standpoint, you're probably okay in terms of the number of units that you're showing. What we're showing in our exercise is that at the end of 8.5 years from now, the association would have over 3,000 homes here in Somerset. So that's almost a third, more than 33%, 35% growth over the next several years. There are still 5 or 6 builders working actively within Somerset, building homes. Custom homes are starting to come back. People are submitting their applications for custom homes, so we're seeing certainly an increase in activity with the change in the economy. People are starting to buy, they're starting to build within Somerset. So there is certainly a growth within our community itself. The other thing too, I forgot to mention, back with the original agreement, a provision was put into that original agreement that should the country club face bankruptcy, that it could sell, that the homeowner association had the option to buy the country club for $1, should that be the case. I'm going to tell you, even back then when we were talking to the country club, I'm going to tell you from my point of view, there's not an interest in my point of view seeing the homeowner association run a country club. So this is not what this is about in terms of the discussions that we're holding with the country club at this particular point in time. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over to Tony to tell you about some of the discussions that have taken place.
Well, before we get into the discussions, though, I want to give you a little bit of a kind of a context of how we've been approaching this. Okay, clearly from before the current board was elected, there's been a lot of concern and discussion and different points of view in the community about this agreement with the country club. And that kind of generated a number of concerns for different people, depending on how you look at things. Okay, one of the major criticisms of the contract, I think, at least from the board meetings that I sat in on before I became a board member, was that under this agreement, the SOA was basically paying quite a bit of money for some amenities. But at the end of the contract, whether that was at the end of 3 years if we chose not to renew, or at the end of 7 or 10 years, or 6 or 10 years, if we chose to exercise some of the options, we would have paid quite a bit of money, and then we would walk away with absolutely nothing. That was a criticism that was leveled, I think, in a lot of the board meetings. I'm sure a lot of you remember that or have heard that. And so that was one thing that was on our minds. The other thing, or another thing, was there was a lot of discussion even back in around the election time about, oh no, will the country club go brown? Okay, and that really comes up a couple of ways. And it's actually a particularly important issue to Somerset. Hopefully you can hear me without the microphone. But that's why we put this here, because unlike a lot of other golf developments where you've got, houses and the golf club all clumped together somewhere, on this map, the orange line is the boundary of Somerset. Everything you see in red is golf club property. Okay? So you can see that in our situation, the golf club really runs all through the community. Okay, so if the golf club was to go brown, as people talk about, as Northgate did, it wouldn't be kind of this concentrated area and you can kind of look the other way and see the rest of the community. You could see it from pretty much anywhere. That's going to affect everybody's home values here. So that was a concern, and I think pretty much everybody during the discussions last year voiced opinions that nobody wanted to see it go brown. But the fact is, that's a realistic possibility in today's economic climate. So that's something that was of concern to us as we started to talk to them. The other thing which we also kind of very quickly realized, the three of us, that this was a concern, is what would happen if the golf course was sold? Okay? And there's no way to know for sure. If somebody came into Somerset with very deep pockets and the objective of building a world-class exclusive country club, that would be great for all of us, whether we're golfers or not. Okay? But realistically, more likely scenario is, as we've seen in various other golf courses around Reno, if somebody was to come in and buy the golf course, they're going to want to return on their money, and more likely than not, the course goes public. It becomes open to the public. Okay? Again, when you look at this spread out through here, and I remember even at the last board meeting, we had a letter read on behalf of somebody else that they came home one night to their home, which was in a gated community, and there was some vandalism going on, and they happened to be on the golf course, and they think people escaped through the golf course or whatever. But now, just think about that. You've got people walking all through here from anywhere outside of Somerset. So I think that's a concern that I know I've talked to some people that they voiced that as a concern. And so once we started these discussions about the short-term amenity and we realized that there may be an opportunity to negotiate something totally different that would give substantial long-term value to the Somerset community. So we said, okay, let's try to pursue this, but we did set some criteria about this. One is, you've already heard Ray and Daniel talk about the fact that we know at some point in the longer term we're going to need more land. This is, you know, we started our strategic planning effort, and just even in the last meeting, there were some interesting statistics that some of the members had brought up. They started analyzing that, in fact, the data shows that Somerset as a area is growing at a much faster rate than anybody else in the 89523 zip code. We're growing faster than Reno is growing in general. Okay, so we've heard lots of things. I know some of you live in Sierra Canyon, and there's some real concerns about the capacity of the Aspen Lodge in Sierra Canyon already. And we're starting to hear some of those comments, let's say, from users of our facilities, not for everything, but for some things now. So it's pretty reasonable to assume that, if you look out another 3, 4, 5, 8 years, and we're having this kind of growth, that either we're going to be way overcrowded in terms of using amenities, or we need to do something else. We need to have somewhere to expand certain kinds of amenities if there's enough demand. Okay, we do not, let me emphasize this, there are no specific plans for any specific new amenities right now. Okay? That is something that we hope will come out of the strategic planning effort to tell us both what our community wants and when we're going to need it. It's not something that we need tomorrow or the next day, that type of thing, but we're hoping that that comes out of that. But I think we all feel pretty confidently in talking with the people on the strategic planning committee and others that, yes, we will need to think about something in the longer term. And that immediately raises the question, well, in Somerset, if we need to do something else, where are we going to do it? And we don't have land. And if you look at the contours around here, the cost of making flat land, because that's what happened here, that's what happened where the country, that wasn't all flat to begin with. This was earthwork. Earthwork's very expensive. So the issue is, where do we go? So those are the kinds of things we started talking about, and as Danielle alluded to, we've actually been thinking about this since the very beginning, since January. So our whole thing was, what can we do for the community that would be real value for the community, not to not have anything at the end of it. And we started talking with the country club people, and the first idea that came up, I won't say first, we talked about a lot of different things, but what started to consolidate is they were in fact willing to give up some land, possibly, in exchange for a longer-term agreement to secure that land. Okay? And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, this whole plot here is the area of where the country club was expecting to build their facility. Okay? This is California, I think. This is the community. These are the houses up here, the parking lot. That's the current restaurant. That's the pro shop. That's the golf cart building where they store stuff. So I think a lot of you are familiar with this piece of land up there and envision what it is. Okay. Let me emphasize again, we do not have any kind of specific agreement. Okay. I put this line around here to show you, give you an idea of what we're talking about. Okay, it's roughly 5.5 acres. It hasn't been surveyed yet. We haven't even settled on exactly where the boundaries may be. But this is what we were trying to do, to get toward in exchange for changing the lease agreement. We would end up with 5.5 acres or so of buildable commercial land that had electricity and sewer and all that stuff already there, which would end up being deeded to the homeowners association. Okay. We also, in talking with them about things we were concerned about, let me give you a little bit of the rough numbers of the terms that we're kind of coalescing around, that again, don't have any specific agreement. As was said before, we're currently paying $15 per unit per month for the amenities. which consists of use of the driving range, use of bocce ball courts, 2 rounds of golf a year, 2 foursomes for each household, access to the restaurant, and then what was originally an 18-hole putting area that we talked about changing into a 9-hole putting area plus a multi-purpose hard court to have more activities up there. Those are the amenities, and for that, we'd be paying $15 a month with all the changes that Ray already talked about. What we are talking about to end up owning this land is $15 a month. Okay. Per unit, but capping the units now at 3,000. The current agreement that we have does not cap units, so if we had a big burst of building or whatever, and the numbers in Somerset originally, when we started talking, were a maximum of about 3,700. That seems to be changing a little bit. We understand Sierra Canyon is the only one now. They replotted some land, which eliminated 75 lots. And a few people have bought neighboring lots and merged them. So the maximum number officially is probably around 36, but it may be lower than that because we're not sure what all builders are doing.
In our projections, we're actually showing 3,400 units over the next 10 years to be built out here in Somerset.
Yeah. But officially, in terms of what builders have told us, they've only eliminated the 75, which is think there's going to be more. They're eliminating. But the bottom line is, instead of paying $15 a month per unit up to 34, 35, 36, whatever the number ends up being, 100 units, and walking away with nothing, what we're talking about is paying $15 per month on the actual number of units up to a maximum of 3,000 units for 8.5 years, which basically puts us out to the end of where the current contract would have ended anyway. But the difference is we walk away with 5.5, give or take, acres of land that we can build on. Okay? But we've also asked for some other things. Okay? To deal with some of the concerns about us being able to, the SOA, being able to control our own destiny. As Ray mentioned, if the golf club, for whatever reason, goes bankrupt, we have the option to buy it for $1. But that contract, and this is from the developer, also states, if this stops being a golf course for 12 months, all that land goes back to the developer, as well as the water rights for that land. Okay? And that's the tough one. Because, quite frankly, if the golf course guys can't operate it successfully as a golf club, you know, we have no reason to believe the SOA can operate it successfully as a golf club. Okay, so what we're then talking about is all this land will go back to the builder. And this is exactly what happened with Northgate. The builder can then do whatever he wants with that land. Okay, so could he build houses on it? Yes. Could he sell it to other builders? Yes. The one that I think is most likely that I would worry about more is he can strip out the water rights and take it to a new development so he can build a golf course somewhere else. And then even if he doesn't do anything with it, it basically ends up looking like Northgate because there's no way in the world we're going to be able to afford to water this to even make it a park. Okay, so, and he has the right to do that. He can take the water rights and walk. Okay, so what we propose at this point is, in addition, or as part of the deal, part of the incentive for us to pay the money to buy that piece of land, as well as continue using the amenities in that, okay, we've asked for certain other restrictions. One is the golf course cannot be sold to anybody except the SOA. We're not obligated to buy it, but they're not allowed to sell it to anybody. Okay. Then, along with that, and this is why these things fit together, okay, as part of this agreement, for us to sign this agreement, they must deliver to the SOA a contract from the developer giving up all his rights to the SOA. Okay? So, what's that really do? That says, in essence, if we end up with a golf course and we don't want to operate it as a golf course, we can keep it as open land, we can keep it as park, we can keep it as, we can use part of it to build amenities, we can do whatever we want. So the SOA controls what happens to all these red things that are running all through the community. Okay? There was a third restriction we asked for, and that is that would require a, presumably, I don't know exactly how it would work, it would, I assume, require a change in their bylaws for the golf club that would require that a supermajority of golf club board members, they're obviously going to be golf club members, but they also have to be SOA owners. The idea behind that is to keep the interests of the golf course and the community aligned. Okay? So that's kind of, those are the key things that we're trying to negotiate. And we're seeing now, and I'll tell you quite honestly, I'm not 100% sure we'll get an agreement. But those are the things we're trying to get in an agreement if we can get one. Okay? And if we can't, we can't. But the bottom line is what we're trying to do is basically make sure that A, we have land that if we need to expand amenities, we have an ability to do that on a decent piece of land, which, by the way, that piece of land is like right here. So you can see geographically, it's kind of like right in the middle of Somerset. So if we ever really want to build another pool or something like that, people talk a lot about indoor pools or whatever, it's a perfect place to put it because it's right in the middle of the community where everybody can have access to it easily. Okay? But what we want to make sure is that if we do a deal to get this land, we want to make sure that first of all, the golf course never goes public, because quite frankly, and we've made this clear, if it goes public, we don't want to put any amenities up there. We don't want to have anything to do with that piece of land. If this is going to end up being a golf course that's open to the public for anybody who wants to come in and out. Okay. The second thing is, if for whatever reason the golf course doesn't work out, the SOA will have the ability to decide what happens with this land. It will not be the developer. It will not be some third party that this got sold to. It will be up to the SOA. So at least they have a hand in our destiny. So that's kind of what we're trying to do and what we're seeing right now. And that's where we're going, that we wanted to let everybody in on. I think with that, let me ask Danielle to finish this off. She'll tell you a little bit more about why we think this stuff's important, and then we will start having some taking questions or letting people talk, okay?
One of the things that I kept saying as we were going through this discussion was it has to be win-win. There has to be a win for the homeowners association when we walk away from this. And again, going back to the growth of our community and maintaining our community as a premier master plan community, we need to keep up with, I don't want to say keep up with the Joneses, we want to be ahead of them. We want to be forward in our thinking, and we want to have amenities for those people who are moving in and coming in and looking at Reno Sparks and going, wow, Somerset really is a place where we want to be because it is just so far out beyond every place else, in a good way. So some of the key benefits that we see here is that all the amenities that are currently being built by the country club per our current agreement would end up on homeowners association land. So we would then have control of the bocce ball courts, you know, assuming that our short-term amenity is a hard court and some putting, we would own that. That's not something that would go away in a year and a half or in 3 years. we, as Tony mentioned, as you can see here, there's not a lot of land for us to expand, okay? Indoor Olympic-sized swimming pool is not feasible here at the town center. We just don't have room for something like that. You know, in thinking ahead, well, again, in thinking ahead in the growth, and as we are growing 35% faster here in Northwest Reno than the rest of our zip code, our exercise facilities, I don't know how many of you come in here and use them. I do quite often, and at various times, whether it's 5:30 in the morning, 9 in the morning, whatever the case may be, you're waiting for machines, same as in the afternoon. We are quickly becoming at capacity. So again, we need to expand and think about our future growth. In acquiring 5.5 acres of land in the middle of Somerset, we can look towards, do we want to put in an Olympic-sized pool? What about a skate park for kids? What about more open space? You know, do we need more than just the 2 parks that we have? But, you know, our parks are public parks. So these would be more amenities for our families, for our residents here of the Homeowners Association. The other thing we do is we control our own destiny. We're not paying money for amenities and then, again, walking away from them. We now have something vested that we're walking away with, and that we as a community can continue to grow and expand. The long-term interests of the country club and the Homeowners Association will be much better aligned in the event that we have a mutually beneficial working relationship. Our goal as board members, like Tony was saying, is to keep our property values up. I hear so often when people come in here, wow, when you drive in over the hill and you see Somerset, it's amazing. What would happen to our community if you drove over that hill and it looked like the rest of Northgate? We want to see the country club succeed, but we also, again, want to provide more amenities. In the event that an agreement is reached, we feel that this is a huge win for our community. And again, working side by side with the country club to create a premier community. We're not just spending money and walking away with nothing at the end. So that's what the board has been working towards, is what can we do that's in the best interest of our community so we can think long term and again continue growing our community as it has already, because I think we all, because we're property owners, want to be here because we love Somerset. And again, we want to continue that, you know, into the future. So I think that those are all the points that, you know, we are talking about in a long-term agreement, and some of the things that we want to make sure we walk away with as a homeowners association. So at this time, we'll open it up to homeowner comments or questions. If you guys want to go ahead and stand up. We're going to try and limit everyone, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who have something to say, so we're going to try and limit everyone to about 3 minutes. We may not respond to your questions right now, but rather take notes and you know, if we see a recurring theme or a recurring question, we can go ahead and address those. There's also feedback or comment cards at the back, so you know, if there's something you just want to go ahead and jot down, but you don't really want to bring up at this time, feel free to do that. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that basically what we want to do, we've got a lot of people here, and so obviously if everybody wants to say something, it'll take a while. So we do want to limit comments first. If we get through a lot of things and there's time left, then we'll kind of loosen up and, you know, continue with the discussion. But, you know, let's just, we'll, as Daniel said, we want to hear your feedback on what you think of the ideas. If you have questions about something you didn't understand or something like that, feel free to ask them. You know, if we can, we'll answer. We may not be able to answer all questions now, as Danielle said. So, but we really want to come out of this with a sense of how a broad spectrum of Somerset residents is thinking about what we just described. So with that, first hand went up. Okay, do we have a?
You guys have the two mics.
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this one to you, and then we can pass one around according to who needs that.
As you mentioned, Sierra Canyon is exploring their own expansion possibilities as we speak. Really, it would seem, just based on some of the things you've mentioned, that the Somerset homeowners may be benefiting more than Sierra Canyon because we have a lot of our own separate facilities. Would you be looking at a tiered fee structure as we now pay our dues at a different level because we pay double dues, you know, different than you do?
Yeah, let me respond to that actually, and I'll give a quick answer, and if anybody else wants to say something, let me know. But actually, the golf course guy did something actually really interesting. I think it was very positive. Shortly after Danielle and I started talking with them, they basically called up some of the homeowner board members at Sierra Canyon and said, why don't you join these conversations too? And so our thinking at this point is that, first of all, Sierra Canyon is part of Somerset, okay? And so what we do and how we plan, assuming we get this piece of land, what we do with it, in our opinion, involves Sierra Canyon as much as it involves anybody else in Somerset. So, quite frankly, this may be something that helps alleviate some of the problems that you guys are facing over there, some of the planning. It may be something that, I suppose, if Sierra Canyon wanted to opt out in some way, that's a possibility. But our thinking going in right now is we're not distinguishing between Sierra Canyon and Somerset for whatever happens up here. This would be something potentially that everybody could do, just like Canyon 9.
Well, I would just comment that your example of the indoor swimming pool, which we have one, and I could see why you would want one, but we probably don't need two.
Right, but maybe, quite frankly, one of the things we found in the already in the strategic planning group is the current population of Somerset, as well as the projected growth of Somerset, is skewed a lot more toward kids and teenagers than I certainly thought it was going to be. The data that they started putting together kind of shows that. So, yeah, I don't remember the number exactly, but it was quite a bit. I was really surprised to see that. So, yeah, you probably don't need a indoor pool, but I know there's a lot of grandparents in Sierra Canyon that would like to have access to a kid's pool or something. So maybe that's what goes up there. The point is, that's what I'm saying. We don't know what this is for, and that's why we set up the strategic planning process so that everybody can get involved in helping decide the future of Somerset. But I would say that whatever we do up here, either it will be jointly with Sierra Canyon or we will set up something in a way that makes it fair. That would be my thinking on it.
A couple of comments. One, you say you're purchasing 5.5 acres of buildable land. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer because it's parking lot. And there's sizable thing in that parking lot. And understanding that any amenity that you put up there is going to increase the amount of parking that's going to be required. Okay? So therefore, the 5.5 acres is not developable. Okay? So whatever you put in there. The second thing, I think you were talking about indoor swimming pool and or skateboard park and all that kind of stuff, which needs to be discussed later, is the fact that we have seasons here. Okay? If you're going to put something there that's usable in the wintertime, It may not be usable in the summertime, and we're investing a lot of money in structures and amenities that aren't going to be used. The other question I have is the existing structures that belong to the country club now. We're buying them. We're buying the land underneath them. So the question is, what is there going to be compensation to the homeowners association for those buildings?
Well, no, you know, now you're getting down into the level of details, some of which we haven't gotten to yet. That's why we said we're here early, we don't have an agreement. We have talked about some of those things. In terms of structures that are there, that the golf course has, they are all temporary structures. Okay, they're all removable structures. For example, my understanding from the discussions we've had, by the way, this little cutout here is likely where the golf course would put its clubhouse when it builds a clubhouse, so we'd kind of be up in the same area. But for example, the cart park, where they keep all their golf carts, there's no need for it once they build their building, because the golf cart storage would be inside the building. That would go away. The restaurant presumably would go away, because the restaurant would be inside the building. So, but your point about parking spaces is really well taken, and this is something we have actually talked quite a bit about with them. And what we've done, I mean, no matter where we build anything, out here, if we were to try to expand this building, we need to add parking space. That's part of land use. But what we have done, and this is part of kind of roughly coming up the boundaries where they are, because I can tell you these boundaries have moved all over the place in different parts of discussion. But what we have done, just from some, you know, literally cutting out, okay, how big is a 9,000 square foot building to this scale, or how big is a swimming pool, or how big is a soccer field, and try to move them around. And the golf course people have put some really good thinking into this. What we found that we feel very comfortable with is that primarily by changing the direction of the aisles, so that, for example, if the parking lot comes in underneath, comes here, and then the aisles go up with the cars parked this way, we can fit roughly 260 parking spaces, which is a number we've been using as a bogey, because that's a lot bigger than what's up there or what we have out here right now. They would be shared, and I should say that the cost for the maintenance and all that kind of stuff for the parking lot would also be shared with the golf club. Okay, they would be contributing to that. But we could put we're pretty sure we can put a parking lot in here with that kind of space and still have room for this outline right here, just kind of for reference, this squiggly line, that's the footprint of this building. Okay, so we could literally build, especially if we move it down a little bit closer to the boundary, we could build a building as big as this if we ever wanted to. We've looked at, you can put a soccer field up here and it'll fit. You can put, here are the bocce ball courts, you can put we've got room for playgrounds and stuff like that, kind of like the little kid playgrounds across the street. So we're pretty sure, we're feeling pretty good that we've got enough flexibility that even though we do have to obviously provide parking, that there's enough buildable land that in fact we can do a lot of different things depending on what we all decide we want to do. So that's kind of as far as we've gotten with those thoughts, but your points are well taken. The parking lot's key. We anticipate all the temporary buildings ultimately go away.
Yes, I'd like to read the views of the very colorful William Korn and Eliza Korn, who couldn't be here tonight, and they live on Mountain Spirit Trail. So I'm quoting here. When we decided to purchase a home...
Can you speak up? Can you speak a little
Yes,
louder?
I will.
Thank you.
When we decided to purchase a home in Somerset, we were not aware that in the future we would be forced to pay for amenities at the private SGCC, or that we will never use nor benefit from them in any manner. We strongly believe that any such expenditure without the consent of property owners is a breach of fiduciary responsibility and possibly a criminal act. Had we been aware that a few unscrupulous persons would unilaterally decide to take such actions, we would not have purchased property in Somerset. Neither Eliza or I play golf. In fact, we don't like golf, but that fact is irrelevant. Our realtor, Debbie Bennington, told us that one of the amenities in Somerset was the Canyon 9 course, which added $15 per month to our HOA dues for each of our properties. We accepted that expense with our eyes wide open. It's regrettable that the community support for the Canyon 9 from the residents who like to play golf only generated $60,000 in revenue during 2012. Perhaps that should ring an alarm bell in the heads of those who are awake. I do not wish to question the economics of the agreed-to golf amenity because I agreed to pay the fees. I do question the board's decision to obligate owners to pay additional fees to a private golf club for amenities which they do not own and may not utilize. The right to eat at the Sunset Grill is of no benefit, as I will not subsidize those who are abusing others. I question the board's decision to continue to waste valuable funds by obligating the residents of Somerset to subsidize the few who are not willing to pay their own way. I believe that the board should rescind the agreement with the country club and let the owners decide by referendum. This will allow all owners to express their wishes by voting for such a large expenditure. Throwing money down a rat hole has never seemed like a rational idea to us. You know, Mr. Corn is very colorful, but he does present some valid points. Thank you so much.
Two things, 2 points. First one is we have some friends that live over in DeAndrea, and you're talking about Northgate, but even more so is I think DeAndrea is closer to us than Northgate as far as the amenities and the fact that it's houses surrounding the golf course. DeAndrea is brand now, and it's also my understanding from our friends that part of the golf course is going to be developed for homes. So I think that's one thing that we should keep in mind. The other thing, just the other day, some of us were talking in the exercise room, and it does get crowded quite often now. And the question was, where do we put new amenities? Because new amenities will be necessary. Because you can't invite more people to join us to build homes, to buy homes, if there's no amenities for them or if there's a long wait for them. And it was quite obvious there is no place to build future amenities. So I think this very possibly could be a win-win situation.
I think the gentleman right back here had his hand up for.
I guess I had questions about the value of the capital facilities. You mentioned, first of all, the country club building the clubhouse. Now, is that going to be an obligation of the Somerset Association or solely of the country club? Okay, so it's just the country club will pay for that. So none of the money that we pay on a monthly basis. Second question is, you say we're going to lose these valuable amenities that we put in. I'm not sure they cost that much to be a major loss. I would think that 1 year's worth of these fees would more than pay for those amenities to be built someplace else. And I don't think we're still looking at, the developers own a lot of land around here. And part of the things I think we're looking at Sierra Canyon is to be able to use some of that land to expand some of those amenities. And it's possible that there is land that the developers control that could also be used as a site for those amenities. I guess my bottom line is I just do not see the value of continuing to put money into these lease agreements. And if there is a value there, then I think it should be presented to the community, and the community should get to vote on it. It should not be just a vote of the board. I think the whole community needs to do that. I see no real benefit for Sierra Canyon in any of the things you're proposing.
Danielle stressed that she's looking for a win-win situation for the homeowner. I think after looking at the first year of the current agreement, this has not been a win-win situation. It's been a negative financial disaster for the homeowners. We paid $430,000 to the country club, and we accessed the amenities 4,039 times. That's $107 per access. Every time somebody hit a bag of golf balls, we paid the country club $107. Every time somebody hit the Sunset Grill, we paid the country club $107. That is hardly a win-win situation. Rather than looking forward, why doesn't the board straighten out the nest they've created in the current agreement and get it into a win situation and get the cost back in line with the meager benefits we're getting?
Let me just make a couple of comments about that. First of all, this board inherited that contract, okay? And so that's why we said what we've been trying to do is find ways to provide more value through this contract. That's what we're trying to do with this whole thing right now, okay? I know that there are some people that think we ought to just wave our hands and make it go away. And they'll say, well, NRS provides for that. Okay, what NRS provides for is we have to demonstrate the reason why it should go away, which we talked about with our attorney in January, and we're assured this would be a very long and costly litigation if we tried to do that. Okay? So it's not, if you read NRS, if you look at how the law works, it is not a unilateral decision that we can just make, and that's the end of that. So that's why we're trying to find ways to add value, okay? And in addition to the actual land, the way we've looked at this, and we've made various estimates and tried to figure out all the different ways we can look at it, okay? The land is worth something on its own. That's something which get no value of right now. Okay, if we end the contract at the end of 3 years, which we can, we would have spent about a little less than $1.5 million, and we would have absolutely nothing. Okay, we could end up with land, but also remember part of those other restrictions. We also end up with control of what happens in Somerset, which I think is worth something to homeowners too. So that's how we're looking at the land. I mean, quite frankly, yes, we could go out, the gentleman who made his comments and left, and, he said, well, how expensive, in essence, how expensive it is to build a bocce ball court. Well, if you got to go out and grade those hills to make enough land to do it, it gets expensive pretty quickly. What we're trying to balance here is the difference between, obviously, if we're paying enough money to the country club to make it cheaper to go out and grade the land, that's what we have to do. Exactly. Yeah. And that's why we're looking at that stuff. Okay. Well, you start doing commercial size grading around here and see how far you get for $130,000.
Thank you. I don't happen to own a home with those 12R right behind the 5 acres here, but if I did own a home there, and all of a sudden I had a lot of noise that you don't have now, maybe a soccer tournament area of the day, I think you could be looking at lawsuits for nuisance, and I think that might be a real problem for you. Better think about that when you're negotiating.
Let me say, we actually have looked into that a little bit. There's a couple of other things you need to know about the land. Okay, that lot was always proposed as a golf course building lot, okay? The golf course is not bound by our CCRs, okay? They can build anything they want back there. If we, the SOA, own the land, okay, the law in Nevada provides that the SOA, when you build something that wasn't expected to be built, you need to deal with homeowners, stuff like that. Technically, there's some issues about whether that was intended to be built or not, but the fact is, if we own the land, at least the current board's thinking is that we would not do anything with it without consultation with the people in there as you would expect it to be.
The majority would still outvote it.
No, it doesn't work out. The Nevada law requires certain kinds of dealing with people who live within 500 feet of whatever it is you're going to build. So there's some different provisions there. So we'd have to balance all that. But at least, again, the SOA would be able to do it. Right now, I mean, if the golf course wanted to put up something that they kept open all night and made lots of noise, they can do whatever they want right now, because they are not bound by our restrictions.
I'm Jim Hayford. I'm on the back, so I thought I'd just walk up there and point myself out. This is me and my wife Jean right about here. Okay? And so I look at this property every morning. And I think it's a nice piece of property, and to say that. So I think it's smart that you guys are making a play for this. I think it's also great that the homeowners association would have some leverage, which they don't now. So I understand what you're trying to buy, and I'm in favor of it. But, there's always little buts. There are aspects of this property in terms of use that you want to take into account before you have all these concepts that are included in the way you value the property. And I'd have to say probably the biggest thing that might be a mystery when you're looking at a 2D drawing is the 3D aspect. This is probably the windiest spot in the western United States. I love it. Personally, I really like the wind. If you attempt to put any outdoor amenity in this place, and if you want to get a feel for it, just try and eat lunch on the patio at the Sunset Grill, and you get an idea. It just doesn't work. So, in general, you are talking about, if you're talking a soccer field, I mean, the poor kids won't be able to go to the West End. I mean, it just doesn't work. Now, so that's one thing to take into account. This is also a hill along here, so that shuts you down. It's a gas line. So there's easements there and so on. So included in this 5 acres is about 2 acres of unusable land there. Another chunk that, I don't know, like you said, we're just kind of drawing the borders, but 280-yard drive that's a little bit of a, I don't know, a slipper slice out, but it kind of comes in this way, is going to ding anything that's in this plot in here. So that tends to limit the use. And then last but not least, the golf course, I think, has this membership thing going, which is a good deal. Folks are, for a month, they pay like, I don't know, $100 to $200, somewhere in that range. And as a result, they've signed up 350 kind of temporary members, or members that can opt out. You know, they're not equity members or something. And with those 350 and the others, this lot's already on the dirt in terms of parking. Now, so I'm trying to figure out here if we had amenities of any kind there, regardless of whether these buildings are going or not, basically it's a big parking lot. It's really tough to squeeze anything else in there, is kind of the feeling of it. So, I mean, I just didn't want, to go screaming into this concept, and then the poor board that's elected next year, they have to say, well, we were, on the board that made this decision. So that's all good stuff. I'd say that if maybe we would run the valet service for the golf course, maybe we could turn into going to service. And then I wonder too if the golf course, if those guys are thinking, well, we'll get this on the hands of the SOA, and then we'll build a golf club over on back behind court or something like that. Because obviously there's other land that for $500,000 a year, okay, if that's the payment, if that's your mortgage payment, I can't add up that many zeros in my head, but it's a lot of dollars. Okay, I think it's in the tens of millions of dollars. Okay, we're close. So the question is, does this free up the golf club from being built in a constrained area, or are they going to continue to use that area for the golf club?
Well, we had,
Who was next?
My name's Ed Hardy. Based on what I heard Tony saying, you're not too optimistic about the country club agreeing to the terms that you discussed.
no, I didn't say that, I was just saying,
I
that
just-
honestly, we don't know.
Okay, but I got the feeling that you weren't very optimistic. Okay, assuming that we don't get that, then we're still faced with the same situation that we're in now, going forward, unless we rescind the contract. And I'm a little concerned about the financial viability of the country club. I just saw on the internet a couple of days ago, someone posted the results of operations for 2010 and 2011, which are public information. They lost 700,000 plus in 2010, 600,000 in 2011. 2012 has not yet been posted. So I'd like to see their balance sheet so I can understand where they are. I understand they did receive about $1.5 million from the developer when he passed the property over to the club. But based on those 2 years' operations, that money would probably be gone. So with respect to the $1 purchase of the property, should they go bankrupt? I'm not an attorney, but I would think there might be a clawback provision in the bankruptcy law that would say that the creditors could come back at that and take over the property, take it away from us. But I don't know.
Obviously, that's something that we have to have the attorneys look at if and when we get to it.
Well, it doesn't look good to me in terms of going forward. Sorry to be the voice of good.
None of us have a crystal ball.
Like Danielle said, you come over that hill when you're coming into Somerset, and in your daily travels, people say, oh, Somerset, that's the nicest area to live in. That is one of the safest places in Reno. And it's good to hear that. But if you think you've taken a hit since 2005 on your home values, 37 to 40%, it's gone down. A $650,000 house now worth $380,000, and a $350,000 house in Dale Webb is worth $225,000 on average. Take that golf course away, and you'll have another negative 20%. That golf course needs to stick around. No matter what.
That's what Beverly was going to say.
much since the beginning. One of the things I like about this place is the golf course. Obviously, I'm a golfer, so that's kind of obvious, but every one of us moved here and we saw the golf course. None of us moved here and then got blindsided by a golf course being put in. Whether you play golf or not isn't really the issue. If the golf course goes away, we all suffer. No one else is going to be buying a house in here unless they come in here and want to really lowball you to get a house without a golf course. Look at Northgate. Look at DeAndrea. I fly over it all the time. It's brown. It's dead. We don't want that to happen. As to what's going to go here, we don't know. I'd like to see an airport. We don't have an airport. As far as noise goes, heaven forbid that we have children out there playing. We've got grown kids, most of us do. But it wouldn't bother me at all if there was kids there playing, making noise. Whether it's a soccer game or a skateboard park or whatever, I don't know. As to what the buildings are going to be, we don't know. That goes beyond the scope of this meeting. This meeting is to basically register your opinion as to what do we get out of this. Right now, we're putting money in to get a bocce ball court. We don't own it. If the agreement goes away, so does the privilege of the bocce ball court. And I think that's what you meant by walking away with nothing. None of us really want to walk away, but we want to get something. It seems to me that if we own, as homeowners, 5 acres of land up there, you can do something with it. That's to be decided later. But if we own it, that's ours. We have control over that. The golf club, whether they build a clubhouse there or somewhere else, doesn't change that. If they build it there, I think it'd be kind of neat. A golf club with amenities and parking that we all get to be able to enjoy to one degree or another. And even if you don't play golf and you never go up there and use any of those amenities, it's still a nice asset for people to see when they come here to buy a house. That's just my opinion. Everyone's got an opinion. They're like kids.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Brooks, and I've actually prepared a slight statement here, but first of all, I want to comment on Mr. Hayford's comments about how windy it is out there.
Speak up, please.
Sorry, I want to comment on Mr. Hayford's comments, very eruditely put, on how windy it is to live in Talon Point, because we have a house in Talon Point as well. And I can imagine how difficult it would be to play soccer under those conditions. I also want to comment and compliment the board, the new board to some extent, in the fact they're making a move in the right direction. They're trying to change some of the terms of the agreement, which is going to be to our advantage. Perhaps they can get a win of some description away from the golf course. I know the golf course is very important to many people who live here, but it's not the only thing for people who live here. So as we see it, what the board has recently done, which is to remove the putt-putt green from the lease agreement with the SGCC, which was foisted on us without a vote by the previous developer. The control board makes a lot of sense to us. Our community, for which golf is not an optional amenity, as we all own the Canyon 9, we're buying it actually from Somerset Development as we speak. And quite frankly, I believe the community is over-golfed. We have 2 golf courses, and we have 2 driving ranges. The additional new community driving range, which we don't own, which we're paying for, is most definitely underused based on observations from people who live on it. And I can't believe that actually putting in another putting green, or a putting green of some description, is another golfing activity which is really needed by our community. On the bocce ball courts, which people have commented on, they're very small compared to others which I've seen in San Francisco, which is a very crowded place, as I suspect most people know. And only 2 were constructed. The original agreement, as several people have pointed out, actually called for 3 courts. And they still haven't really put adequate shade in, to protect us from the blazing desert sun where we live. And as far as I can tell, being up in Town Point quite a bit, they're not that widely used. If you go back to the Canyon 9, going back to the use of golfing facilities in our community, the Canyon 9, which people pay to play, generates surprisingly little revenue. And you have to judge how much it raises, $60,000 they heard mentioned, versus how much it costs to operate it. It costs us $340,000 a year to operate the Canyon 9. So it's not exactly a great deal. If a pickleball court is put in, that sounds like a very good idea to us, but it should be owned, as has been said, by the SOA. And if it's going to be paid for by us, if we're going to pay for it, we should own it. It's that straightforward in my mind. And I noticed that they want to put a basketball court in there. We have a basketball court in the gym already at the TCTC. Is this another requirement for the community because people think there are going to be more children? Because when you look at the activities in the TCTC, they're dominated by the kids, especially the swimming area and probably the basketball court. Maybe they want to put another basketball court in at the country club area for the Sierra Canyon residents. I don't believe they have a basketball court at the Ashton Lodge. All these new amenities require significant dollar investment. I'm with Tony that if you break something, it's very expensive. And if we're going to spend a lot of money, we should approve it. We should all be involved in this, and we should be voting on it, and we should all approve it. We are all residents of Reno, and Pat and I are very proud that we live here, and we can subscribe to the view that it's a beautiful view when you drive in, almost out of the world view. You can't find a better view in this part of the world, in our opinion. And I can tell you that listening to what the Sierra Canyon people have just been saying is that they can appreciate or attest to the fact that when they pay for things that you do not want or need, it makes it very difficult for you to pay for things that you might actually want. So it's very important that we invest our dollars wisely. If it means buying some lots from some of the other builders and not doing a deal with the country club, that should be an option which is on the table. It's just as important. Don't forget, we are a golfing community. We have very high monthly dues in this area. There's no opting out. If you live in Collin Ranch, dues are low, and if you don't want to join the equivalent of the TCTC, you don't have to. Thank you.
I think Chuck.
My name is Chuck Walker. I'd like to address several issues here. First, the Bill Brown issue. That's not going to happen. That land is too valuable. If the land goes back to the developer, the gang of five, of which three of the original founders of that group are sitting in this room tonight, in their due diligence, looked at those golf course plots. They are all, or about 90% of that is buildable, so you would not have golf course, you would not have green. You would have houses, because that's the most value to the developer. That's just an observation, okay? You want to check that with the county records. There's a comment that we would get a deed to the land, including all the rights, and they would be supersede what the developer currently has. I think before we progress with further negotiations, I would like to see a document from the developer that says he will waive his rights and he will file a document such with the county records office so that we have that rights. I'm concerned mostly about the water because if the country club goes out, we have no water for the Canyon 9 golf course. And we all need to be aware of that, okay? As far as what the board is doing, I have no issues with the direction they're going. I think they're trying to plan for the community. With this particular piece of property, if they would buy the piece of property, my understanding from this discussion is that it would be for the exclusive use of the homeowners association. We would give or grant no rights to the country club for any use on that land. If we do that, there is not enough parking up there for them to have a clubhouse and then have people playing on that lot. So I think those issues need to be addressed up front. And one of the concerns I had with the agreement as it was put together what we have currently is that what was originally talked about is not what we ended up with. So I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I'm saying let's look at this with our eyes wide open, and as we go through things, we create an opportunity to win-win. I think there is a need for a collaboration between the homeowners and the golf club. And I don't see a total collaboration in everything I've heard yet. We've not heard any comments from the golf club. I know there's members of the golf club here, representatives of their board. One thing that concerns me is the perception, maybe not reality, but the perception among a lot of people here is that we're subsidizing the golf club. And I think we need to hear from the golf club that they are an ongoing venture, so that we don't perceive that we are subsidizing. I don't know, that's not, I'm not saying that right, but I think the board needs to get a commitment and understand that as we go into this venture, that there's a win-win and both parties are solvent for the entire period of that venture. Thank you.
Let me just address a couple of points. I can't address all of them that he said. I know Chuck, we work together on the transition committee, and he gets into this stuff in great detail, and he knows what he's talking about. With regard to one of the points you made about seeing the contract from the developer up front, that's exactly what we're saying. That we would not sign a contract until we have that reversion agreement. That's part of the condition of coming to an agreement. In terms of the use of not the use of land, as you said, what you were talking about in terms of the golf course having certain rights up there and stuff like that. As I said, my understanding from all our discussions is they would still build their clubhouse there. One of the things that we do not have a lot of control over, if you look at our CCRs, there are actually things in there that govern what we can and can't do about access to amenities that affect the golf club. So we are bound by those. So I refer you to those to take a look, and that'll give you, a better feel what's going on. Our intent is not to punish the golf course or, somehow make them fail or anything like that. What we really see is, from particularly the way it's intertwined through the community, it's best for all of us if we actually work in the same direction. And that's why what we're really trying to do is make sure that their interests are aligned with ours. We have no interest in getting into a deal where we're shoveling money and somebody else is enriched from it and we get nothing out of it at the end. That's why those restrictions that we mentioned earlier, why we put those in there. That's part and parcel of what we think is important, because it ensures that we have something to say about our future, and it ensures that we can stay aligned for the benefit of the community. So that's what we're trying to do.
There's a gentleman in the back that just raised his hand. I can't reach that far.
My name is Rich Ritchie. I'm new to Somerset. I've been here a little bit less than a year. I want to compliment the board on what you're doing. It's a very ambitious program you have, and if you succeed, I think it's going to be wonderful. I'm just surprised. Maybe there's a mistake in my homeowner's dues, but my homeowner's dues are only $156 a month, and the $15 of that goes to the golf course. I think that's a pretty good deal. Everyone that comes and visits me is talking about homeowners' dues that are $400 and $500 a month. So I have no complaint, even though I didn't get a voice in it, of contributing to the golf course, because I bought into a golf course community. Last thing is, when it comes to amenities, I don't think you can have cost benefit on all amenities, because if we did, we probably wouldn't have a swimming pool here. So those are my comments.
My name is Pat Gaskill. I'm a resident. I live in Talon Point. We've been here since 2008. Lived here with our family. Great community. It's been an incredible enrichment of our lives being here. The schools are fantastic. This is home sweet home for us. And first and foremost, I just want to say that I'm your neighbor. We live here together. There's going to be a lot of discussion going back and forth about what happens. I happen to be the president of the board of the country club as well. Several of our board members are here. Several of your neighbors who are country club members are here. And this is an open forum. I'm glad we're having this discussion. I prefer and request that as these go forward, that we continue to talk with each other. I'm not hard to find. I'm an easy guy to get in touch with. Happy to sit down with anybody who has questions about the things that are being discussed, and we can talk them through. There are a lot of misunderstandings. I think there were a lot of misunderstandings on the original agreement and continue to be misunderstandings just from the comments that I hear. And the more we talk, the more we really get close to the truth. We may ultimately disagree, but we need to be as close to reality as we can be in this. And I saw open letters on blogs addressed to me, but the person never called me. They never asked to sit down with me. And we're neighbors. And so let's not draw the battle line and start throwing haymakers just yet. We don't need to do that. We're in a discussion period, and I hope that that tone remains. And thank you for putting on this kind of a forum here today.
This meeting was announced to conclude at 7 o'clock, so it's about 10 to 7 now, so we'll take about 2 more comments.
That's good for you.
I commend you, by the way, in having this information exchange meeting. That's something that the previous board was very defective in. But at any rate, one question I have is, on this parcel of land where you're talking about $15 a month, and they were deeded over to us, is that $15 in addition to the $15 we're paying for amenities? So you're saying that if we continue the current agreement for 8.5 years, we get that land free?
No. We are not continuing the current agreement. Okay, that's part of what we're trying to do. That, you know, to be honest, I don't know which attorney drafted that agreement, but it's really pretty poor. What we are attempting to do is replace that agreement with a deal that says if we pay $15 per month per unit up to a maximum of 3,000 units, regardless of how many might be built out there, that we continue that for 8.5 years. Yes, we get that land and we continue to have the same access to the existing amenities that we have now.
So which are currently built on that?
Most of them. Obviously the driving force isn't built on.
Does that mean that the event trigger clause that's in the current agreement, whereby if we decide to join with them in building their clubhouse, we pay more assessments? Does that mean that the event trigger clause is something that would be thrown away?
It's possible. We would negotiate that. I mean, quite frankly, the plan that we've been talking about, including with the golf course, doesn't really envision an event trigger. Okay.
And in acquiring that land, would we insist that they build the third bocce ball court that was required under the existing agreement? Or are we going to let them slide on that?
No, we are in discussions about that right now, but that's not the focus of this meeting, so we're not going to talk about it.
Okay, one last question, and perhaps Mr. Gaskill can answer this. I think the financial viability of the country club is something that we really have to consider in going forward with any long-term lease agreement or whatnot. Now, we know they lost $650,000 net income loss in 2011. In 2012, we should have offset that with about $500,000 of association money. And seeing as how the 2012 financials are going to become public in the very near future anyway. Can Mr. Gaskill kind of give us a heads up of what their financial status was for 2012 with regard to net income, operating profit, loss, etc.?
Pat, do you want to say anything about 2012 financials?
First of all, your board members are invited to all of our equity owner board meetings, and they are privy to our financials every month. We don't do that in executive session, so they see the financials from us on a monthly basis. I guess the short story would be we ran an operating profit last year. We have the Homeowners Association is our largest customer, and so those two things are not secrets. The capital expense, I think the $400 and some thousand that was mentioned for accident amenities, $200,000 of that was spent to improve the amenities that were there. So that didn't just go in the pocket. It was part of the agreement to build amenities there. And so a large part of that money is actually going to build things. So I guess the short story would be operating profit last year positive, cash negative due to capital expense. I hope that helps.
Let me just, yeah, okay, well, I will take one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
I haven't spoken to myself yet. I spoke to I have a very quick question. Make it too quick. Yeah. Looking at that plot, looking at the plot there, if we take into account a clubhouse could be built there, and then the gas pipeline and the takeaway area, you know, it should be considered what actually you could put on there, because you're cutting it down to, you know, like 3 acres or less.
We've talked about that a great deal. We are fully aware of the easements. As I tried to say earlier, we believe that by reorienting the parking lot, we can get more spaces than there are up there now in a smaller spot. The issue with the easements is not that you can't build anything over them, it's that the company that owns the easement or has rights to the oil company or the electric can come and tear it up and doesn't have to fix it again. So what that really means is that if you want to put stuff over an easement, that's where you put parking lots and grass fields and things like that, because if they ever do need to come in, they can do that, and it costs a minimal amount to fix it, and you put structures, you know, whatever they are, buildings, swimming pools, whatever, where there aren't any easements. And we have looked at that, and we do think that there's enough space and enough flexibility that, you know, anywhere that we build, we're going to have to build a parking lot. We can't get a permit from the city without building a parking lot.
What about builder lots?
One of the things, just so you know, this is, you know, in part, timing isn't perfect because this opportunity came up and we felt we needed to start talking about it. Ideally, if we had the strategic planning committee a year or two ago, that would all be synced. One of the things we've asked the committee to do specifically is develop an inventory of places around Somerset that are either buildable or could be relatively easily made buildable. Because as you know from around just driving around, if you want to get any parcel of any size, generally you're dealing with retaining walls and a lot of excavation. At some point, it's cheaper to buy the land. If that land is so expensive, it's cheaper to go out and do the earthwork and create it, and that's the kind of way we're trying to look at it. Let me just make one last comment on that, and that is that one of the things we've tried to keep in front of us in all our discussions is if we get what we think is a fair deal for the SOA, in other words, we get land and rights, whatever we're asking for, at a value that we think is worth it, then it doesn't matter to us what the country club does. You know, if we provide them cash flow that they use to secure financing, well, that's up to them. I mean, that's what they can do as long as we're getting a fair deal. And if we're not getting a fair deal, we don't want to be involved. So that's kind of the way we're looking at these. And I thank Pat for making the comments tonight. He's been really excellent to work with as we go through some of these tough issues. And no disrespect to Pat or any of the golf course guys, but we specifically did not invite them. We did not want to have a joint presentation of what might be an agreement. We as the SOA board wanted to talk to our SOA members to tell you what we're thinking and get your feedback about that. So there was nothing nefarious about not inviting them, but this was the SOA meeting to hear from you guys.
Wait, I think we had one question that was supposed to be the last question up front. Are you good? Okay.
We are just past 7 o'clock, which is what we said. There are, in fact, comment cards and question cards back there. If anybody wants to submit any further questions to the board about any of this, we will do our best to get back to you, or we'll address it at the board meeting or something like that.
Survey came in and said there's good questions to be asked. Are we that rigid that if there's only two or
Well, part of the problem is, and I'll ask Melissa back here, we've taped this like we did for the election, so the people that can't be here tonight, and I think we're running into battery problems.
If we can pause, I'll switch the battery, but
So again, if you guys have, further comments or questions, we definitely want your input, which is why we're here this evening. So please write them down on those comment cards or question cards, and we will take them into consideration in future ongoing negotiations or as we're sitting here and looking forward as to whether or not this is something we do want to discuss in station. So again, if we didn't get to your comment or question, please write it down and get it to us.
That'll get it out, so everybody hears this for next week or whatever. I'll be here for a few minutes if somebody wants to ask me a question. But let me make one comment. This is something that some of the strategic planning members sitting back there are saying. And just so you know, because we really need your help on this, you will, at some point in the near future, be getting some materials that our strategic planning committee and our communications committee jointly have been working on putting together a survey which we really want people to participate in to give us some information about the way you see or would like to see the future of Somerset. And so when you get that survey, and there'll be more information coming, but please take a look at it. It's not going to be very long. It won't take that long to fill out, but it's going to be very helpful to letting us know, what you guys really want this place to look like in the future. And so this is all part of what we're trying to do with strategic planning and being more open and more transparent with what's going on. So with that, I'll say officially we'll close the meeting, but if anybody wants to ask me anything, I'll stay here for a few minutes.